Welcome back. This is week 3. I imagine by this point you're starting to hit a little bit of a groove with your internship. You're meeting some people, figuring out who are the folks that are going to help you get the most out of your experience. This week we're going to talk a little bit about your first cultural surprise. We're going to talk about intercultural dialogue and sort of making connections. Now, I want to share with you a little bit about my own experience working in an international setting. I want to tell you when I went to study abroad, I had a short internship experience in a bank that was local to the area. And this wasn't really my choice. My area of interest is not banking. I already told you that budgeting is not one of my favorite things. But the school that I was going to had sort of a business leaning. And so many of their internship type pieces were financial in nature. And so I was about to get sort of baptism by fire because I was working in another language, and some of you all are doing that now, and you're trying to adapt to a different language and pick that up and try to learn not only the general language of the area, but the cultural language of the business or company that you are working for. So there's a whole new set of vocabulary that sometimes goes with that. So I am trying to kind of learn the social norms of the area and at the same time the language of business, which was fun and a challenge. I knew nothing about accounting, so one of my first surprises was that it seemed like every other student at the place that I was had a background in accounting, or at least had a basic knowledge of it, and I had none. So I was trying to make myself as useful as possible in my new bank setting, and trying to sort of lean away from the areas where I knew I wasn't strong. So I was able to kind of use actually some of the strengths that I think I have to do that. So like connectedness and seeing how things fit together, and just really some of my customer service skills, which I think are fairly strong. I was able to do that and sort of make up from some of my lack of knowledge by just being generally helpful and friendly and going over and above to try to be flexible and figure things out. And like many of you probably are learning to do, you were able to use your foreignness to your advantage, right? People are sometimes are impatient with you as a foreigner or as someone who maybe doesn't know the language as well if you're in a different language environment. At the same time, if you maintain a good attitude and you indicate that you have a real interest in the culture and you want to connect and you're trying and you're doing your best, you also will find a lot of mercy sometimes, which can be helpful. So I found this definitely to be the case. People were flexible with me because I showed that I cared and I wanted to do a good job, and I was able to sort of make up for some of my lack of immediate skills by reaching out culturally and connecting with people. So as I would talk with people, I would share about my background and where I was from. I would share about how much I enjoyed being in the location that I was at, everything that I was learning, and I would sort of reinforced to them that the reason I was there is because I was really interested in their culture. So, you know, in Argentina, we would talk about things that people cared about, right? So we would talk about football, and I would talk about, the fact that I took some tango lessons while I was there, and the fact that I loved the food, and that I learned to drink mate, and all of these very Argentinisms, right, that were very much a part of their culture. And for me to show enthusiasm for those, that I was interested in learning, that I would stop and take time to talk with each person and try to figure out what I could learn from them, really, I think, went a long way. So showing that enthusiasm, not being afraid. I mean, obviously you don't want to make more mistakes than you need to, but that's also how you're going to learn. And so having a good attitude towards the fact that you don't always know what you're doing, and you will find that out. You'll have to ask a lot of questions. But again, the attitude that you do that with, that if you're always putting your sort of learner face forward, again, one of my other strengths, learner, and letting people know that you're here to learn, you're here to grow, you're here to help them accomplish their goals. But in the meantime, it's going to be through sort of enthusiasm and goodwill that some of that's going to take place. And I think that can go a long way as you do this. So part of what I want you to think about this week is, what was really that first cultural surprise for you? Did it happen in your actual internship placement? Did it happen on the street? Did it happen where you're living? What was it that really kind of took you aback and you said, oh, Yeah, I'm living in another country right now, and this is very, very different and very foreign to me. What was it that shocked you about it, and what did you learn? Was it one of those maybe traditional things that you would think people would say about the culture where you're at, depending on where you are? That people say, "Oh yeah, everybody knows that that's what happens there," or was it something small maybe that you didn't expect it, that you look in the way that people eat as different, or the way they prepare things is different, or just the way that they interact with each other is different, and asking questions to each other that may not be what you're expecting. So share with me this week what that first maybe unexpected experience was. This will be something too that could be interesting as part of this cohort group for us to share with each other. So I may do a little bit of that depending on what you send me. So I do think that you'll get a lot out of that sort of experiential piece, and you'll start to have those learner doors open to you. There are a couple things on your list this week that we're going to take a look at. Obviously, you have some reading for this week, as you do through most of the early part of the course. There are two videos that I'd like to have you take a look at. We're going to talk later in the course, too, more about LinkedIn, but I'd like you to get a great introduction to it, which I think you can get through this video. And it'll teach you a little bit about what's important to have in your LinkedIn profile and how to use LinkedIn as a networking tool. There's sort of a couple of different levels of LinkedIn. There's sort of that general, like, here I am, here's my profile, here's who I'm connected to, and I want to keep those people's contact information so that I can communicate with them. But then there's a deeper level that you are able to really utilize LinkedIn as a way to network, to have somebody connect you to someone else that they know and figure out what those connections are, to utilize the advanced search feature to search for people who work in a particular company that you're interested in, or to find out if you have a connection with them through your alumni network or through a volunteer activity that you do that might give you an inside track in working with those folks. So I think that will be useful. You're also going to get an introduction to interviewing and how to present yourself in the best way possible for an interview. This will be particularly interesting for you in your intercultural context. But interviewing is an important skill, and there are all kinds of pieces to this. Everything from small introductory things like making sure that you handshake well and that you smile as you go in, to having a list of really prepared questions to ask, because there's nothing worse than when the employer turns the tables and says, "What questions do you have for us?" And you go, nothing. I think I'm all set. You really want to have those prepared great questions. And so I think this will give you an introduction to some of those skills that will help you start thinking about where you want to take things from here. What's after this experience? How can you start thinking about those interviews and getting yourself ready? I think this is particularly important for people who are having an experience like the one you are. I've worked with students as they have come back from study abroad opportunities at my current university, and I find that they've often had a great experience, but they don't really know how to communicate that when it comes to an employer. You don't want to just go to the employer and they say, "Oh, you had this study abroad, you had this wonderful thing, you went to Italy, what was it like? What did you do?" And your answer is, "Well, I backpacked around a little bit and I saw lots of sights and I took great pictures." That may be a wonderful reason for you to go personally, but it doesn't really help the employer know what skills you've picked up that are going to help them. So you are in the fortunate position that not only will you have traveled abroad and potentially connected with another language, but you have actually worked abroad. That is like the killer combination, because employers will know that if you have done work in another context, that means somebody trusted you to do that work. Somebody saw your potential, and somebody graded you in doing that, and somehow you survived. So your ability to not only enjoy a foreign culture, but function and work in a foreign culture is really, really valuable, and it could potentially be the linchpin in your interview itself and your job search experience. I mean, I had this experience even just with the language part itself. Just the language ability gave me a leg up in at least 2 or 3 of my job interviews. And so that working experience there is going to be even better. So you're going to want to use it as a building block of what you do, and think about how the skills that you have gained working with uncertainty, working in environments where you have to read people, where you have to be emotionally intelligent, where you have to understand where people are coming from and helping them get a successful win as well, to be independent in your thinking, to be adaptable. Those are the skills that employers are going to love. And so thinking about how to make the most of those is important. And this video will help you a little bit with some of that. And then you have a writing assignment of 500 words that you need to submit to me via Moodle, and it will talk about how to to do the extraordinary at your workplace. So what I'm really looking for is, based on the reading that you've done, is what is it that you think you could do where you are? Now, maybe you're in a position that you feel like you could have a lot of influence. Maybe you're in one that you feel like you could have less influence. But imagine yourself as leading your organization to something great, or at least in your small area. What project could you accomplish? Who could you partner with in order to really do something, maybe kind of amazing? So I'm hopeful that you can do that in your current situation. If you're not finding that as a possibility there, well, then think through and brainstorm, maybe in an eventual job, what you would like to do in that way to really do something extraordinary. But I'm hoping that you have, at least on a small level, the ability to say, in my current placement, I think I could do this, and that would be great. And that would really showcase my skills. It would help my employer, and it would enrich my experience. So a lot of good stuff this week. I hope you enjoy it. Check out the videos, send me the assignment, and I'll look forward to hearing what you're learning. See you next week.